Welcome to the France 24 debate. Pakistan votes, and sadly it's amid an atmosphere of violence. This Wednesday, a suicide blast in Quetta has killed over 30 people. The attack claimed by the Islamic State group. This the latest in a series of attacks on the run-up to voting day. The most deadly of those killed over 140 people in Mustang earlier this month. The winner of the last election round back in 2013 is now in jail. Nawaz Sharif, convicted of corruption after leaks from the Panama Papers. He returned to Pakistan to face jail earlier this month. Senior members of his party, the Pakistan Muslim League, have been charged under anti-terror laws for having organised a demonstration on the day of his return. Well, the favourite to win the election is Imran Khan, and some of you, especially if you follow cricket, will know exactly who he is. Right now, though, he's the leader of the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party. Khan has lived a life in the headlines, first as a cricketing superstar, and now, of course, as a political leader. He's expected to win this election, but Sharif's people are already crying foul. They say the military is manipulating the vote in Khan's favour. And this in turn leads to suspicions of planned coup d'etat, all kinds of rumours circulating. So, Pakistan votes, here to discuss the significance, the importance of this election and where the country goes from here, and how Imran Khan, if he is eventually Prime Minister, might change things. We have in the studio, and I'm pleased to welcome you, Sir Moin-ul-Haq, who's Ambassador of Pakistan to France. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Joining us by satellite from Washington, D.C. is Sadanand Doom, who's Resident Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Thank you for being with us, sir. By satellite from London, Dr. Aisha Siddiqa, defense analyst and author of Military Inc., which is about the Pakistani military's massive financial holdings. Thank you, too. And joining us by Skype from Montpellier, Fazana Shaikh, who's Associate Fellow, Asia-Pacific Programme at Chatham House. Joining us from Rawalpindi as well in Pakistan is Azaz Saeed, journalist and author of The Secrets of Pakistan's War on Al-Qaeda. I'll bring everybody in first, though. We have an update on Pakistan today. And as I was saying at the start, an explosion in the city of Quetta near a polling booth, killing at least 31 people. A timely reminder of some of the problems any leader of Pakistan will have to tackle.
An election day marred by violence. In Pakistan's southwestern city of Quetta, dozens were killed after a suicide bomber blew himself up at the gate of a crowded polling station. The blast has been claimed by the Islamic State group, according to its Amaq news agency. The attack has left many in the province of Balochistan afraid to leave their homes to vote. The frontrunners of the election condemned the attack. The leader of the PTI, Imran Khan, who is widely tipped for victory, broke election rules by addressing crowds after casting his ballot.
I urge every Pakistani to come out, not just for me, but for the better of our children, for the new generation, and for the future of Pakistan. Everyone who is sitting at home and listening to me, it's your duty today. It's your duty to the country.
Khan's campaign promises to eradicate corruption to build a new Pakistan. He also wants to build an Islamic welfare state. His main competitor is PMLN leader Shahbaz Sharif, the brother of the ousted Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, who is in jail on corruption charges. He has been boasting his party's achievements with infrastructure projects, including roads and power stations that have helped hugely reduce electricity blackouts. As Chief Minister of the province of Punjab, he has cultivated relations with China, which has invested billions of dollars in the country. Sharif's campaign focuses on returning the nation to the path of prosperity. Wednesday's vote will see the nation electing a new National Assembly, the lower house of Parliament, and 4 provincial assemblies.
Fadaba Abbas with that roundup of the situation so far. Let's get right up to date and go to Rawalpindi, where Azaz Saeed, the journalist, is waiting for us. Can you give us a sense of what's been going on, a sense of what you can see where you are? What are people saying?
Well, Mark, today was the day when the elections are held across the country. There were a couple of incidents of violence in the country, but mostly widely elections were held in a peaceful manner. But the questions are there. As you know, there were many questions.
Clearly an issue with the link to Azad Saeed there. We'll go back to him when we can establish a clearer link. But let's take advantage of the fact we have a top quality guest in our studio, sir. Moin ul Haq, thank you for joining us. When you see the images in our report of people killed on voting day, when they're going out to exercise their democratic right to vote, I imagine that leaves you full of immense sadness.
Thank you, Mark, first of all, having me on your program. Yeah, it's a historic day for Pakistan. A very important elections taking place, which marks the third consecutive transition to a democratic government. And the people of Pakistan have come out in massive numbers to exercise their democratic right. Yes, there have been these tragic incidents a few days before the start of the elections, and this morning also, in which we lost very precious lives. Many were injured. These, of course, these are heartbreaking scenes, heartbreaking moments. But the Pakistani people remain resilient. And despite all these challenges, all these threats, which our detractors have tried to sabotage the elections, they have come out in big numbers and spoken for democracy in the country.
Thank you so very much. Let's bring in from Montpellier, joining us by Skype, Farzana Sheikh from Chatham House. Farzana, is the important thing here today that democracy is being served, that people are getting the chance to have their say, have their vote?
There's no doubt that any elections in Pakistan, which has been ruled for more than half of its history by military dictators, is an important event. But I think what we need to be aware of in this instance is that democratic rights may have been exercised, but in a context that was deeply flawed. And, there have been allegations, which I hope we'll go into later on, about widespread pre-poll rigging. And most voters, I think, can be forgiven for believing that today's playing field was not exactly a level playing field.
Farzana, we can go into that right now because you've brought it up, and it sounds like it's the right time to tackle that. You're saying vote rigging, the biggest issue, because obviously I've heard about people on the side of the Sharif party saying that they feel that the vote has been rigged by the military in favour of Imran Khan.
Well, I think what is important here is that, of course, there may not have been any obvious and blatant cases of rigging today, though I have read reports of stuffed ballot boxes. I think what is more important here is the run-up to these elections. And in the run-up to these elections, what we've had are widespread reports, many of them really quite well substantiated, of the intimidation of members of certain political parties being forced to defect to other parties said to be the preferred choice of the military, of harsh curbs on the freedom of the media that were apparently under pressure not to report on Mr. Sharif's PMLN party. And of course, we have heard of the widespread, we know of the widespread victimization that has been directed against Sharif's party. So really, the run-up has been very disturbing. And I think, on Sunday we had these explosive revelations by a senior judge of the Islamabad High Court, openly accusing the military establishment, by which is meant here the army and its security services, of meddling in these elections. So, as I said, there will be many who believe today that they haven't exactly been offered a level playing field.
Azara, thank you for now. We'll come back to you very shortly. Let's bring in from London Dr. Aisha Siddiqa, defence analyst and author of Military Inc. Dr. Siddiqa, thanks for being with us. Having listened to what has been said, would you agree that there's been hardly a level playing field in this election?
That is indeed true. There is a dearth of level playing field. However, I think one needs to explain that what do you mean by what the absence of level playing field does to the voter's mind. The way in which the Supreme Court, the higher judiciary, the National Accountability Bureau have moved against PMLN versus other people who have been accused of corruption, the way the Election Commission of Pakistan has moved in, and has been an unfair treatment. So what this does is it builds on top of this existing narrative of Imran Khan as a leader of change, as a new man, as a Mr. Clean, as somebody, as a messiah. It adds to his charismatic character, which is what attracts voters towards him. And I think it's, this is what kind of sharpens his support amongst people.
Thank you for the moment. Please stay with us. Let's bring in Sanad Andoum from Washington, D.C., joining us by satellite. Sanad Andoum, resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. I'm interested in your feelings, sir, regarding the vote, regarding what's happening, and regarding possible outcomes. When you've been sort of picking up on what's coming from Pakistan and hearing what's been said here, what are you left with?
I'd like to make two quick points. I mean, the first, I'd like to echo the remarks of Dr. Sheikh and Dr. Siddiqa, that in many ways this has been an unfair election, right? If it's as though you start a race, but then you shoot one of the people in the race in the leg before the race starts. So obviously it's not going to be a fair election. The second is that this is really, in many ways, a tragic missed opportunity. Because 5 years ago, when Pakistan had an election, it did appear as though civilian politicians were strengthening their hold on government, and that the old imbalance that allowed the military and particularly the army to play a disproportionate role in Pakistan's governance was gradually being phased out. In many ways, what we're seeing now is a return to the 1990s, a return to a familiar pattern, and that is really a tragic missed opportunity, because had the military authorities stepped back and had they allowed democracy to play out the way it had in the last election, for instance, you could have made the argument that Pakistan was firmly on the path towards becoming more deeply democratic. Unfortunately, we're not able to make that point. Finally, I'd like to say that if you're looking at it from outside, I watch this from Washington. We must all be concerned about the implications for stability, because it looks like Imran Khan will win, but at the same time, I don't think the army would be able to control the narrative. There are many people, including guests on the show, who have pointed out that this has not been fair. And the fact that whoever is elected, in this case likely Imran Khan, will be taking office under the shadow of what is seen as an unfair election does not bode well for stability.
Sanad Andoum, thank you very much indeed. We'll get back to you very shortly. In the studio, Moin ul Haq, who is the ambassador of Pakistan to France. Some fairly contentious points were made there, Mr. Ambassador, regarding the fairness of the election. Would you like to reply to those?
I think I would like to comment here that in our setup, if you understand, we have a caretaker setup, which comes into power immediately after the dissolution of the previous parliaments, with the mandate to hold elections. So it's a neutral government, and it has a constitutional mandate to conduct elections. And then we have a very fair, very free and independent Election Commission of Pakistan, which has done a marvelous job under the circumstances and the challenges. We are talking about a massive exercise. More than 100 million voters, more than 100, double than the France. There are more than 11,000 candidates who are contesting elections, and thousands of polling stations across the country. So massive administrative exercise under the security situation which you have seen. Unprecedented deployment of army has been done, about 350,000 forces, plus about 400,000 civilian law enforcement agencies. So it's a major exercise being conducted in the country. And of course, I think there will be viewpoints about its fairness. I will not go into that. But I can just say that we have a very independent election commission, which had done a very marvelous job, and the turnout, the massive people who have come out and to vote, exercise their democratic right in a free environment, testifies to the fairness of the exercise.
And staging this with, on one level, a terror threat, which is very clear and obvious, and we've seen today in Quetta the horrible effect of what that could be. But as the other guests were pointing out, the aspect of other types of corruption, other fears of corruption, ballot box stuffing, that kind of thing, it must be incredibly impossible. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
It must be impossible for, I'll say for you, but it's not your sole task, but for you, Pakistan, to guarantee that it's fair, guarantee there's no corruption. You can't, can you, surely?
You know, there is a process. There is a complete legal system, administrative system in place to address these complaints, where the Election Commission, after the elections, will be receiving these complaints. There will be election tribunal and legal processes which will address these complaints about rigging and corruption and those things. And plus on that, we have a very important election observer independent from European Union. This is the 4th time that they have come to Pakistan. It's 100+ delegation which is observing the election across the country. Then we have a Commonwealth group which is in Pakistan. Then we have from Japan. Then there are journalists from France and also another. So they are also welcome and see the election, conduct of election independently.
Okay. Well, we will get into more of the issues regarding the fairness of the election and, of course, the significance. And, of course, Pakistan's strategic position in the world, of course, comes into this as well when we take up part 2 of our debate just after a very short break. Thank you. Welcome back to the second part of the France 24 debate, our examination of Pakistan's election. A vote has taken place in spite of violence in the run-up to Election Day and an attack on a polling booth in Quetta this Wednesday. Where will this election take Pakistan? Well, let's introduce our guests. In the studio, Moin ul Haq, who is Ambassador of Pakistan to France. Thank you for being with us, sir. By satellite from Washington, D.C., Saranand Doom, who's Resident Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. By satellite from London, Dr. Aisha Siddiqa, defense analyst and author of Military Inc., which is about the Pakistani military's massive financial holdings. And by Skype from Montpellier, Fazana Sheikh, who's Associate Fellow, Asia-Pacific Program at Chatham House. Before I let our panel loose again, let's take a closer look at the man that most people expect to win, Imran Khan. We are hoping to bring you a quick look at Imran Khan, a superstar cricketer in his day, and now, of course, a very prominent political figure in the Pakistani scene, and many people tipping him to be the next Prime Minister. Let's take a look.
Using his legendary charisma, Imran Khan knows how to connect with a crowd. The Pakistani cricket star has glamour, but also a common touch that has served him well since his ambitions turned to politics.
We will deliver justice to the masses, regardless of them being a Hindu or Christian or Sikh, regardless of them being poor or from different provinces.
Khan catapulted to global fame as a World Cup cricket champion and is known in the West mainly as a celebrity playboy. But now he's a populist and reformist politician, leading his Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party. And after Wednesday's elections, he could be Pakistan's next prime minister.
Imran Khan is a different kind of a politician. In the last 20 years, he has rise to a level where his party is now government in waiting almost.
Khan also appears to have a powerful ally in Wednesday's election, the nation's military. The army establishment is at the center of most election rigging allegations. It's seen as trying to prevent the rival Pakistan Muslim League from returning to power and give an edge to Khan's party. Khan denies the claims, and his tough talk on corruption is one of his greatest political strengths. He won many times on the cricket pitch, but if his party is victorious Wednesday, leading Pakistan will be his biggest triumph yet.
Imran Khan, who is the favourite to win this election, though we are told it is a close-run affair right now. Let's bring in Fazana Sheikh from Montpellier, who's joined us by Skype. Associate Fellow at Chatham House. Farzana, are you convinced by Khan's credentials as a potential Prime Minister?
No, I'm not. He's an untested commodity. But you know, there are many curious things about Khan which I think need to be underlined. The first is that, of course, he's been widely seen as an outsider, and his brand of populism as the style of populism associated with someone outside the system. But in fact, everything speaks of a manufactured populism, the kind of populism that sits well with Pakistan's dominant state institutions, particularly its military. The other thing that I think needs to be noted here is, of course, Khan's anti-corruption campaign. I mean, he has campaigned, as we know, right from the outset against the politics of nepotism, against corruption, and has elevated it to the key problem facing Pakistan, which is again curious, given that Pakistan has, of course, suffered now for more than a decade under under terrorist attacks. And while terrorist attacks have gone down in recent years, they are by no means over, as you know, we've seen in the run-up to these elections, almost 200 people killed during the campaigning period. But what worries me most is that Mr. Imran Khan has openly declared that in the event of him emerging as the largest party with a need to form coalitions, he's not going to form coalitions with either Mr. Sharif's PMLN or the PPP, which leaves many of us wondering whether he might have to turn to parties of the religious right. I mean, as we know, what has been distinctive about these elections is the entry of hardline religious parties, many of them taking part for the first time in elections, and many of them notably acting as proxies or political arms of organizations that have been prescribed or declared as terrorist organizations by the United Nations. And it certainly, I think, is a cause for worry if these parties command a certain presence in Parliament, whether they will also be given the kind of immunity that many of them seek, immunity that will, in some sense, protect them from charges of terrorism that attach to them, but that were curiously lifted in order for them to take part in these elections. All very disturbing trends.
It's very clear that you're alarmed by that situation. Dr. Aisha Siddiqa in London, from what Farzana Sheikh was saying there, clearly there may be fears about, for instance, the situation for women in Pakistan going forward.
Well, you know, if you look at the voting pattern, there is women in the tribal areas, women in KP, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, they've come out and voted. So I'm not concerned about that. I think the overall impact of what Mr. Khan and his allies, you know, whatever his allies will be. I mean, as we speak, and I look at election results, the informal election results, about 14 of the candidates of Allahu Akbar Tehreek, which is a party linked with Lashkar-e-Taiba, seem to have been clearing the elections, and we may find them in the parliament. I think there are a couple of things that we need to look at. The impact on women is just you know, it's a consequence, it's a result of what is going to emerge from this kind of politics. Mr. Khan himself is very conservative in many ways. I mean, although he is brought in, and the government of Pakistan through years has brought in women to contest elections, but does not say much about their real empowerment. You know, what does it mean? What does it mean to have a lot of these religious parties get into the parliament for once? The last time there were religious members of religious parties in such massive numbers was in 2002 under General Pervez Musharraf, and now. So what would it mean for liberation of women? What would it mean for their rights? There are a lot of questions that need to be asked. Very quickly, you know, the clips I've been seeing about Imran Khan, I think what needs to be clarified here is that, you know, his claims about making it a Pakistan that even-handedly deals with the majority and minority, especially religious minorities, I'm not sure, because partly he has been supporting and partly he has been shaking. One, he's known as somebody who approves of the Taliban. Secondly, he has been shaking hands with parties that talk about blasphemy, about significance of the blasphemy law. So I don't think there is going to be a major shift. But the problem is that all of this has been loaded on the shoulders of Imran Khan and in turning him into a charismatic leader. So whatever he does will be initially taken kind of lying down. And I think this is the point which probably the ambassador has missed, that it's not about rigging on the polling day. It's pre-poll rigging, which is the state getting into the minds of the ordinary voter and sending a signal that this is the man who is acceptable to us more than anybody else.
I'll bring the ambassador in to answer that in a moment. First, Sananand Doom in Washington, a resident fellow at the American Enterprise Institute. Sananand, the parallel I'd like to ask you about, the kind of manufactured populism, does that make Khan a little bit like Donald Trump, do you think?
No, I don't think he's like Donald Trump at all. You know, I mean, first of all, I'd like to say I don't want to sound like a member of a Greek chorus, but I have to sort of reiterate that I agree with every word that was said by Dr. Sheikh and Dr. Siddiqa. But you know, if you want to put yourself in the shoes of an Imran Khan supporter, it's not very difficult to do. You know, I grew up in India in the 1980s and the 90s, and I saw him as a cricketer. He was indeed an amazing cricketer, not just as an all-rounder, as a batsman, as a bowler, but also as a leader of men. You know, he came back at the age of 39, you know, way beyond the prime age for most sportsmen, and willed Pakistan to this famous victory in 1992. He does have a reputation for personal probity, which is more than you can say for many politicians in that part of the world. And so, you know, there are elements of him that you can understand the appeal. But at the same time, I have to say that I share the concerns expressed by your other guests. Now, he's not Trumpian in the sense of being this person who comes from nowhere and is opposed by the establishment. You have to understand, Trump was opposed by the Republican establishment. Imran Khan is very much a creature of the Pakistani establishment. He is someone who, as various people have noted, has been groomed by the military. He is the blue-eyed boy of the military, which is the establishment. And beyond that, he has shown very little courage when it comes to saying unpopular things. For example, he has not stood up for the Ahmadiyya community, which is a very small and severely persecuted minority. In fact, he would side with the oppressors. So in many ways, this is a person who is a creature of the establishment, and the worries that you hear over and over are worries from people who feel that strengthening that establishment is really not what Pakistan needs right now.
Sananand Doom, thank you very much indeed. Please stay with us. Let me give the Ambassador, Moin ul Haq, Ambassador of Pakistan here in France, a chance to answer some of those issues there. And obviously you don't speak for the current government or the next government. Your role is somewhat neutral, but you are here representing Pakistan, so I need to put these questions to you. Our guests raising issues about the unfairness of the playing field in the elections, saying, I think it was Dr. Aisha Siddiqa talking about the fact that people not getting a fair chance to sort of evaluate things, people being manipulated in some kind of way. Are you comfortable with the freedom of expression, the freedom of press, the liberty to express in Pakistan?
Yeah, Mark, I would not like to get into a debate on that. As I said earlier, the Election Commission of Pakistan is a very independent institution, and which has conducted this marvelous and massive exercise in a very successful manner. The people of Pakistan, of course, will have spoken. And as I said earlier, there are forums to receive these complaints about rigging and complaints about corruption and whatever, and to address them. So I think, these exercise which has taken place today, in which people have come in large number, and in a very free manner they have exercised their votes.
And this in spite of the terror attacks as well.
In spite of all these challenges, they still have come in large numbers. And about the media in Pakistan is freest than any Western democracy. It criticizes the government, the sitting government, in a very open manner. So we are proud of our media, and I think that it has played a very important role in this democratic process of the country.
Thank you. I need to draw a line under that issue and move on to Pakistan's stability and the importance of that regionally, and of course the role that Pakistan plays in the international setup. Senator Nandu, I'll go back to you in Washington if you don't mind, sir. How important do you see the role of Pakistan going forward in the various challenges that the world faces, for instance, against terrorism?
Well, of course, Pakistan is an extremely important country. It plays a vital role, particularly in Afghanistan. And I think that is the prism through which many people in Washington will be viewing this. Because we've seen in the past that Imran Khan has made comments that have suggested a certain degree of sympathy towards the Taliban. In fact, he had earned a nickname. He used to be called Taliban Khan at one point. And so one question that arises is, are we going to see a hardening of Pakistan's position? Are we going to see deeper support for the Taliban or not? That's one important question. The second question raised by one of your other guests also is the degree to which some of these hardline Islamist groups, terrorist groups like the Lashkar-e-Taiba, as well as sectarian groups like Sepah-e-Sahaba have been mainstreamed in this election, and what impact that is going to have on the Pakistani polity and on policy. And finally, as you probably are aware, the relationship between the Trump administration and Pakistan has been fairly rocky. President Trump began 2018 with a tweet lambasting Pakistan for not having done enough against terrorists that attacked American troops in Afghanistan. And so I think we are in for a rocky ride and some very interesting times.
Thank you very much indeed. Dr. Aisha Siddiqa in London. The issue of the military, of course, key to any development in Pakistan. And I'm wondering how the next Prime Minister will have to deal with issues, say, for instance, dealing with India over Kashmir, other challenges that Pakistan is facing.
I think to a large extent, the next government, and I'm hoping at this point in time that it's going to be headed by Imran Khan, would kind of stay, keep the very conservative course, which is I don't see a lot of movement on Kashmir or India. It's also, we need to remember that India's own elections are coming up next year. So I think between Pakistan finishing off with its elections and Indian elections, I think a lot of initiative is going to be lost there. But I think more important, much more challenging for Imran Khan or any Prime Minister for Pakistan is how do you come up with resources? I mean, there's a major issue of resource negotiation. Pakistan's economy is not doing well. It may need to definitely would have to go to the IMF in a couple of months, or go to the Chinese to get some more money. So there is that. And if the money is brought in from whatever resources, the question then will be how does it get distributed? The military needs money, development needs money. The previous government had put about 20% budget in development. That will have to be diverted back. And the trickiest issue between civil and military at this juncture is the 18th Amendment to the current 1973 Constitution, which gives financial autonomy to provinces. And the current Army Chief General Bajwa had spoken against 18th Amendment. So if there is going to be any movement to change that balance of resources between the provinces and the center because the military needs it, I think that's going to be very challenging and put a huge burden on Mr. Imran Khan or whoever is Pakistan's next Prime Minister.
Dr. Siddiqa, thank you very much indeed. Fazana Sheikh, a final thought from you?
Yes, I think as far as it comes to Pakistan's regional policies, if Mr. Imran Khan is to lead the next government, I don't expect to see any change in policy towards either India or Afghanistan for the simple reason that these aspects of regional policy have been jealously guarded by the military. However, Imran Khan is going to face a challenge, as Dr. Siddiqa just said, with regard to raising revenues to deliver what he calls his Islamic welfare state. And for this, of course, he's going to have to go with begging bowl in hand to the IMF sooner rather than later. And given the kind of fiercely anti-US rhetoric that Mr. Khan has honed over many years, I don't think he's going to get quite the kind of sympathetic hearing that will allow him to achieve what he wants. But we'll have to wait and see.
Indeed. Fazana Sheikh from Chatham House, speaking to us by Skype from Montpellier. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you to Dr. Aisha Siddiqa from London. And thank you to Sanadan Doom joining us from Washington, D.C. from the American Enterprise Institute. Still with us in the studio is Moin-ul-Haq, who is Ambassador of Pakistan to France. And Mr. Ambassador, I'll end with you just by asking, what would you like to see come out of this election? What are you hoping for? This is a hopes and aspirations question. What would you like to see happen next for your country?
It will be very unfair to prejudge the outcome of this election. The results are still pouring in. But I think this election has been a momentous occasion for the country. It is a clear manifestation under the challenges that we faced, the recent terrorist attacks, which tried to deter the people of Pakistan. We have seen a clear manifestation that the people of Pakistan wants this democracy in the country. They want a stable government coming up out of this election. So we do hope, the people of Pakistan do hope that whoever comes next and forms the government will take this country to the future.
Moin-ul-Haq, Ambassador of Pakistan to France. Thank you, sir, very much for joining us. Thanks to all our guests, and stay with us. Media Watch coming up now. Continue our analysis of Pakistan's election. Nick Rushworth has been scouring the internet to get the latest on that. Nicholas, over to you, sir.
Hello, Mark. Hello. Of course, first stop to look at the Pakistani papers, and what stood out for me was the cartoons. Let's go to one in the Daily Times, which paints a bleak picture of this particular vote, as do the other cartoons. Now, there you can see we've got a picture of a person casting their vote, and it goes into the rubbish bin. And the comment there is that on the front page of the Daily Times is, think globally, but vote locally. Don't get sucked into the whole issues about national leaders, the big stars, Imran Khan, Shahbaz Sharif, or Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. So this second cartoon here, again, also very bleak. Your vote here in one box and your dreams there in another box. So we're having a real flash of cynicism, but also people going to the vote, being very realistic in a sense about what's going on in this election. Now, there we see the three main contenders. Again, another paper. This time, that previous cartoon was The Nation. This is the Tribune, saying we've got a song and dance show, corruption, performance, promises. So bleak analysis in the papers and bleak cartoons.
You could probably say that about any election anywhere in the world, couldn't you?
Indeed, indeed. But let's skip over to the international coverage, papers in the States. This is a headline in The Hill, which is the paper for the politics in D.C. Military is the fourth party shaping Pakistan's elections. Now, the analysis in that piece is, well, if the winner is the army out of these various candidates, then with the army's favourite being alleged to be Imran Khan,
yeah.
Then will that lead to stability? Will that be a question of better security within Pakistan? Similar headline here in the Washington Post saying their analysis, the Pakistani military has its fingerprints all over this election. There you can see a picture of Imran Khan the army's man. Now, the quote there is from a former diplomat, Hussein Haqqani, who is now living in Washington. He says that the military's ability to control the Pakistan civilian leadership has faded, and that has meant they have panicked, and they are trying to gain back power, and that could lead to more havoc in the country. So a sort of contrasting opinion there. So the army has tweeted. Here we've got Major General Asif Ghafoor saying, thank you for voting. You have rejected all kinds of malicious propaganda. Now, we know that in the vote counting is underway now. Actually, the whole question of Punjab province is central. That's finally balanced. The Times of India reporting there that the Pakistani army has stopped media from entering polling stations in Punjab. So a very tense election with so much to play for, with this just one headline here from the Nation saying that there's a media 1984 in Pakistan, so pressure from the army on the media, according to that paper, with Dawn curtailed, Dawn being one of the big platforms, curtailed in parts of the country.
Nicholas Rushworth, thank you very much indeed. Our thanks again to Pakistan's ambassador to France, Moin ul Haq, for joining us. Thank you, sir. And thanks to you for watching. Stay with us here on France 24. Of course, so much more to come.